another episode of the IDS podcast. And today we're going to talk about photography and styling. And, you know, you're 8 months working on the room, one afternoon to shoot it, and 10 years of it representing your work. And that's kind of what we are going to get into. So I want to welcome Jamie from JBT Designs out of Northern New Jersey. Jamie, what's going on? How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. So you're a designer and a stylist, but correct me if I'm wrong. It seems to me, just from knowing you, that you style more than design now. Is that accurate, or?
It is 100% accurate. I started off in the design world. I worked for an interior designer for a couple of years, then branched out on my own, started getting my own projects, still kept a really great relationship with that designer. And I started doing my own thing with the design world. So for a few years, I was, JBT Designs. And then one day, I guess like 2 years after COVID really calmed down a bit, the designer that I had worked for reached out to me. We were talking and she was telling me she has a photo shoot coming up, and she was telling me how much she's dreading it. Like most designers, photo shoot day is really taxing. It's, there's a lot of pressure. Like you said, it's 8 months to even 3 years of working on a project. And that one day is really critical to showcase what they've done. So she was really stressing about it. And I was just like, oh, I love photo shoots. I love doing it when I was decorating and designing. And, so she said to me, can you help me? So I went to her photo shoot. I brought props. I bought flowers. I brought, food props also for the kitchen. And we had a great time. And it was where I met a photographer that I hadn't used personally, but I actually suggested to this designer. And it was somebody that I was following on Instagram, and we developed like a Instagram friendship together. And from that photo shoot, she just we had a great time. And she just started recommending me. So I did keep my design business on the side. I shouldn't say on the side. I think the styling was more of a side thing at that time. And then, over the years, it really just started taking off more and more. And I started enjoying it more. And we'll probably get into why. But definitely styling just became more of something I loved and I was looking forward to. And I remember speaking to a designer friend of mine, and I was speaking to her about it, and she said to me, she brought it up with me. She said, well, why are you still designing? Why don't you just style now? Mm-hmm. And I thought it was the craziest thing because I put so much into my design, aspect of my business, that to think that it was just I almost saw it as a failure to move on. And then I started realizing it's not a failure, it's a pivot.
It's an evolution. Evolution of your business.
Yeah. And if we don't do that in business, what are we here for, right? So, so it was an evolution, 100%. And I ended up just, closing down the design aspect of my business for now. Who knows what's going to happen, right? Everything's always evolving. Mm-hmm. So who knows in years from now what I decide. But for now, I am solely styling for designers.
Awesome. So I did some research on you, and I wasn't trying to be creepy, but it looks like you started at Hearst originally. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That is true.
So that's pretty neat because you do come at your design work and styling, for that matter, from an editorial perspective, if you want to call it that. So I'm curious, what did working at Hearst teach you that you sort of utilize today from an editorial standpoint?
I will tell you, I've always been very interested in the creative world. And when I was in college, I majored in media studies, always knowing that I wanted to end up in magazines. And I did. Right after I graduated, I got a job at Hearst magazines. It was a startup magazine called Shop Etc. And it was fashion, home, and beauty. And, I was in my early 20s, and a lot of the assistants were the same age. And while, all the assistants were interested in the fashion and the beauty, I was like loving the home department and always going there to see what they had.
Mhm.
But I actually worked for the managing editor there. So I did more of the editorial, legal, business side of it. And it was like a lot of drafting contracts, working with photographers, actually, working with the art department. We're actually working with we're acting as a liaison for all the different departments. So it definitely, I mean, there was so much it taught me. Number one, obviously, is like editorial, what they're looking for, right? Um, a piece of clothing might come in and it might look beautiful to your eye, but then it doesn't photograph well. So,
Mhm.
I got to hear that whole process going on around me. And then just seeing what the art department did and how they really created those pages to look the way they needed to. So that, the story of the fashion department and the home department and the beauty department could really be told visually. And it was fascinating to watch, and I loved working with them. So it was really amazing. And then after the magazine closed, I actually worked at Oprah Magazine for a bit. And that was also, I was working in the photo department actually.
Mhm.
And that was also incredible to watch and see how they developed everything and how they came to life on the pages. So, yeah.
No, that's incredible, and that really set you up for success as a stylist. At what point did you realize that designing and styling for photography were two completely different skills?
So, you know, it's funny. You start learning over time. Like you said, everything's an evolution. I remember picking out some props that were like smaller items. I'm even looking at them around my desk. Like smaller prop items that I was like, oh, this is perfect for a kitchen and this is perfect for a living room. And I would buy it. And then, you bring it to the space and you're like, oh, it is perfect, but it's going to look horrible on camera. And you start realizing, so, when you're styling for design, you're really styling for your client's lifestyle, right? You are styling for their reality. You're styling for their budget, for their kids, for their pets, for who they are. And when you're styling for a photo shoot, I always love to tell my designers and contractors and architects that you're really like, this is their time to shine, right? So, perfect example. Last week, I was at a Hoboken duplex, and we were shooting, and it was a beautiful space. And right when we come in, my assistant clears the space. She takes videos of everything so that we know how to put everything back for the homeowner. And we cleared the space, and I set up the dining room. And literally, I could count three items that I put in that dining room. Okay. It was just these two gorgeous white sculptural paper mache, large, very large vases or jugs. And then just this bowl, this gorgeous copper bowl. And I remember when the photographer took the picture, um, the designer was standing there and she's watching, and she right away said, this is exactly like what my vision was. Like, you literally created my vision. It came to life. And it's funny because, again, the homeowner's styling was beautiful and it was perfect for them. And I don't want to call it a before and after, but at the end of the day, it's like smaller items that work for the family. And, if their family comes in or their friends come in, they're going to say how beautiful it is, but it's not going to work for the picture. And it's not going to work for the vision of the designer or architect or contractor. So,
Yeah, that makes
I,
sense. No, no. So on that note, what is that point in time where the designer's job ends and the stylist begins? Where you
okay.
can sort of say, you did what you needed to do, but we're shooting now. Now I need to sort of politely take control.
Right. I mean, really, I think the designer fully understands that. when they hire me that it's probably going to happen. There have been photo shoots where I come in and a designer, okay, so I'll put it this way. Basically, some designers have a package at the end of their project. The final thing is to buy accessories, right? So they work with the homeowner and they bring in all these different accessories and they place them around the house. And then they hire me for the photo shoot to make sure that, the pictures are going to come out exactly how they want it to. And I've come into situations where the designer will see all the props I bring in and they'll say, well, I bought all this stuff for the client. And I think the client's going to be upset if we don't use some of it. So I always try to incorporate, but I always explain, like, the camera sees things so differently. And it's like what I was saying before, like proportion. And this is something I learned, obviously, as being a designer also, like, proportion is huge, right? And the camera really notices that stuff. So if I'm putting tiny little items in the picture, it's not going to work. If I'm putting a lot of items in a picture, it's not always going to work either. So, the client, the designer, or again, architect or contractor will have a conversation and we'll talk about, and sometimes the homeowners included, like sometimes they get nervous when they see all the stuff I bring in and they're like, but I just bought all this stuff. And I'll explain, like, the camera just sees things very differently. And they do understand, like, I always try to incorporate things that the homeowner and designer had brought in or has. I think it's always nice to add those personal touches, but I think the designer, sometimes it's before the photo shoot and sometimes it's at the photo shoot that they'll start realizing what I mean and what we need to do to make it, really perfect. So
it's funny. I always tell the designers, you see real life in like a 3D space, but a photo is 2D space, and everything, like you said, proportion, scale, everything has changed when you're looking at an image, especially when nowadays a high percentage of images are viewed on a small 4-inch screen more than anything else. So what you see grandeur in real life is being viewed on a 2D 4-inch screen. So it changes everything. So on that note, what does the camera see that the eye doesn't see? I mean, I know it's, I just spoke about 3D versus 2D, but besides proportion, are there things that really make a major difference in what the camera picks up versus what you would see when you walk into a room?
So, it's funny, like when you walk into a room, there's like so much emotion. It's like you're taking so many different things in to tell the story. But when you're looking at that picture, you don't have that chance, right? Like you're looking, like you said, at that 2D flat picture and that's it. Like you don't have the chance to actually like look around and see it all. So you really, like, within that frame, you need to capture whatever you can.
You have 2 seconds to tell that story because it's a phone they're looking at. Yeah.
100%, literally maybe even less than 2 seconds, right? Like think about Instagram, how everybody's just swiping and scrolling. Like you need to like capture it right away. And you really need to be like clear on that mission ahead of that photo shoot. To tell that story and to make sure that your vision is getting other people as excited as it got you and your homeowner. So it's like we said, it's proportion. It's also it's picking sourcing, I would say, the right and curating the right pieces that are going to just go and capture the audience the way you need to, right? So I think it's like the quantity of pieces in the picture. It really depends. It really depends on the room, but I would say proportion, biggest thing. And then just also like the visual story and knowing what your client wants to tell and then capturing it with those props that you bring in.
Sure. And I always say flow also is crucial. The flow 100%. Of the room, especially when you're shooting depth and you're capturing one room into the other, that flow has to flow properly. And if there's something that's not flowing, I hate to keep saying flowing, but if something that's not flowing right from one room into the next, then the picture's lost.
100%. 100%. And that's a huge thing also. And there are different ways that I get to play with that. So if, a lot of times a designer will have a color theme, right, that they carry throughout the rooms. And it could be like, let's say, a green pillow in one room and then green walls in another. Sometimes it's not as obvious, and I love that. That's like a fun challenge for me because that's where I bring the props in. So I will bring in a green vase or something. I'm just bringing up the green color just as an example, but I'll bring in something to continue that story and continue that flow like you spoke about. Which is a huge deal to me, right? Like when you have that portfolio come out, you want the rooms to make sense together. And they typically do because the designer is doing it for the homeowner. So it's going to tell its own story. But that's my job also to weave those pieces throughout those spaces and to continue that story.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't work with as many stylists as I would like to. But that being said, what do you find designers that don't work with stylists are sort of, I don't want to say getting wrong, but what mistakes do you find that they're making when they're styling their own shoots? And it's not a fault of their own. They're just not aware of how to style for the camera versus real life.
Right. So it's funny, like, I mean, I think it's incredible when designers are able to do it on their own. So I don't want to take away from what they've done. I know that it's not easy to always hire a stylist, but the differences I see, it's an exhausting job being a designer. It's so beautiful, it's so rewarding, and it's exhausting, right? So after all the time that they spent putting their gorgeous projects together, when photo shoot comes, they're tired, they're spent. So a lot of times I see that they'll kind of just like look at other styling ideas from other designers that they look up to and respect. And they'll try to, I don't want to say mimic, but kind of like, recreate those looks, which is a great idea. And that's fine. It doesn't always translate. And sometimes it ends up being generic. And so I think what a stylist or what I like to bring to my clients is something very personal still. Again, like personal for my client, the designer, and personal for the homeowner. And a lot of times that doesn't really happen or it doesn't translate as well when the styling happens without a stylist. Because again, they're exhausted and they're trying to get through it. So that's one thing. Also, like, a photographer's job is plenty just being a photographer. And when a photographer has to add the, task of being a stylist day of and moving those dining room chairs and those throw blankets that are like the most tedious part of the day, it's not as easy, right? Like it doesn't flow as well the day.
It doesn't flow, and speaking obviously from a photographer, it brings you out of your focus on
exactly.
your task at hand, which is
right.
composing and lighting the best you can.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So, and then the designer doesn't always realize, right? Like we could sometimes like set everything up, everything looks perfect, and then I'm like, wait, I just have to, tweak. And literally, like, if an outsider is watching, it's kind of comical to watch, like, the tiny little movements that I make, but they make all the difference. Mm-hmm. And if it's just the designer and the photographer there that day, and again, like you said, your focus is to get the lighting and the composition perfect. The designer's focus is really to, like, make this day worth it and beautiful. But they're like also bringing all the props and they're trying to remember it just doesn't flow as well, right? It doesn't, like I think everybody needs their task and they need to stick to it so that I mean obviously we could intertwine, but it just helps better and you could see it. I think you could see it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's jump into shoot day for a little bit. Walk me through that process quickly. I mean, you show up to a finished project.
Yeah.
What happens?
Okay, so there's a lot of prepping to do before, but day of, I am bringing a carload of props. I am bringing a lot of florals and food props, and I'm bringing my assistant. So we come in, we find a place to set up. Typically, like we try to find a space that won't be photographed, so a room that's not going to be done, whether it's a garage or just a hallway that we're not shooting that day, and we set everything up. We go around, check out the rooms to see them in person because I've already seen them in pictures. And then my assistant goes around, takes the videos to make sure that like once the photo shoot's done, everything goes back to where it's supposed to be. And then I start setting up. So, we take the props. I have a whole list of every prop that I'm bringing in, which room it's going to go into. I also bring a price list so that if the homeowner wants to buy anything, it's readily available for them to know how much it's going to cost. And I set up the photographer, depending on the photographer, they choose which room they want to do first based on lighting. After the room is done and detail photos are taken and everything, depending on if the homeowner's home and, able to say whether they want to keep stuff, we will just like reset up the way things were, or we'll leave some props for the homeowner to incorporate with their, other personal pieces. And then we leave, I have a little vacuum I always bring. We leave the space clean and ready for the homeowner to, live in again. But the day of, I mean, it's like it's like a tornado came in for a little bit. But we try to keep it in one space. And yeah, I mean, it's a great day. It's a great day.
Can you talk about that? I guess that like little three-way dance I like to call it, or that relationship or workflow between the designer, stylist, and photographer when they're working on a shot, composing a shot.
Yeah. So it really depends on the designer and photographer I'm working with and what it looks like. I have some photographers I've worked with who, really want my input on where chairs should be, or if the designer's in the photo, like how they should stand and, how their hair is, how their feet are, how their hands look. And then I have other photographers who, they're really confident in their ability to do that stuff, and they will I kind of wait to see what they want from me, and I always offer my opinion and then step back if they're okay with doing it on their own. But I'm there to do whatever I can to, number one, make the pictures gorgeous, and number two, make everybody happy. Recently, a photo shoot that we had, uh, like I came in, I saw the space, I had a feeling that some of the furniture was not furniture that the designer picked out. I had a quiet conversation with her to ask her. She said it wasn't, and that she would be okay to see, my other options, and we played around with it. And, it was definitely like you have to collaborate really well with the designer, and with the photographer to make sure, everything's flowing, like you said before, easily. Like it's, the designer wants to get what they want out of it, and the photographer wants the pictures to represent who they are also with the lighting and composition. And I want the props and the visual pieces to tell the story for everybody and for my own brand. So it's constant, working with each other and just making sure that everybody's respected and everybody's getting what they need out of the day.
No, that makes sense. So Like I sort of opened with, you have months and months of prep work, or sometimes even years, and literally one day to capture the whole thing. Most of the time, one day to capture the whole thing. And on the flip side, that's going to represent your work for the next 5 to 10 years. So for designers that are on the fence, based off what I just said, make the quick case of why it should be like a non-negotiable when capturing a project.
I mean, you said it perfectly. Like, it's that one picture that people are going to see about you, and it's going to represent you for years, and you need to make sure it does. Um, and really, like, you just want to make sure that the pieces that are going into that room are going to represent you, represent what you stand for, represent your brand. And, having a stylist do that for you, and a stylist that really could understand different styles, and different designers, and you especially, like, it's, I think the most crucial thing, like the difference between a styled room for a photograph and one that's styled for the homeowner, it screams so loudly to me, and I would never show it, but it really, it's just, I'll tell you one thing that a lot of designers love about the day. Obviously, it's, the outcome of it and the photos that come from it, but also it's the fact that they could breathe. They could finally breathe on that day. And it's me and my assistant that are running around and doing that work that we prepared all those weeks and maybe months for. And the fact that they could sit or stand even and just enjoy watching it come to life in
Just
front of them.
watch their work be documented. That's it.
Yeah. It's incredible. So really, like, I think that's the biggest thing for them, that a weight is lifted hiring a stylist. It really is. And I've heard so many people say it to me. So I think it's like priceless. I think, again, also for the photographer to not act like a stylist that day
Yes.
is huge. And it
No,
really
for sure.
shows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for designers that are sort of on a tight budget, what should they prioritize before the camera comes out?
You mean tight budget before they hire a stylist? Like
Correct. They don't know. Like,
Yeah.
if they can't afford it and they're like, all right, I need this to look a little better. Give me 1 or 2 tips where they at least do this if you're not going to bring on a stylist and get better product.
So I think the first thing for them to do is to really remove everything from the space.
I was about to say less is more.
Yes, remove everything. Start with that clean slate that you created for them. And then slowly put things back on that you want to see in the room. So if you're bringing design books, if you're bringing books that interest them, slowly put it back on and step back and look. Obviously it takes time, but like the day does take time. And when you take time, it comes out well. So, don't worry about rushing through things. That's a huge thing I see. Like, a lot of designers on a budget think that if they go faster, if they make it a half day shoot, it's going to be better. I would say slow down. So first take things off, slowly put them back, slow the process down, really. Take the time to really look and observe and see. You worked so hard for that day. You should make sure you treat it like that, And then florals are huge. They're huge. Like, don't just go to the ShopRite or any supermarket and get florals. Like, really spend your time, and bigger is better. Bigger is better in photos.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, we're getting low on time, but I want to let people know where they can find you if they want to reach out, if they're interested in finding out more information, if they are looking for a stylist, if they just have questions or want to talk. I know you for a couple of years now, and I know you're open to help people out. Where can people find you?
So on Instagram, I'm JBT_styles. And then on my website, I'm www.jbtdesigns.com. And you can find all information, questionnaire, everything there.
Okay. And we'll put all that information in the show notes. But as we close it out, one final question for you. What about this work, because you've been designing and styling for a long time, what about this work still gets you fired up to go out there every day and do it? Especially now in the busy season.
I love that question. Honestly, what keeps me going, I love the relationships with the photographers and designers, and that those final edits and just seeing it come to life. It's so exciting for me, and it makes me so happy. It makes
fulfilling.
me so happy. The biggest thing, again, was when that designer said what we created was exactly how she envisioned it when she started the project. That, to me, is the most rewarding thing.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's fulfilling. I feel the same way on my side of things. And, when I finish a great project or incredible project, or what I think is an incredible project, I feel the need to just show everyone the pictures, no matter if they care or not. And most people don't care. My wife is like, yeah, it's beautiful, I don't care, move on. But it's exactly. So it just it's satisfying seeing, and I think it's the same thing for designers. I'm on a project for a day and editing for a day or two. So it's only a couple of days invested of physical work, but designers are on projects for months or years, and it's so fulfilling to see that project documented well at the end of the day. And that's all you have. I mean, we didn't talk about legacy, obviously, but like when these projects are done, that's your legacy, is the photos. That's all you have.
100%.
So
huge deal. I agree.
Cool. Well, Jamie, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Always fun chatting with you.
Yeah.
And we'll speak next time.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.